All right, Genesis chapter 30, part 3. We've been talking about sowing the wind and reaping the whirlwind, and up to this point, we've been focusing on Jacob, Yaakov, who has sown the wind and reaped the whirlwind. What Moses, the author of this text, does is he turns the tables, because now it's time for Laban, Jacob's uncle, his mother's brother, to now have the tables turned on him, and he must reap the whirlwind because he has sown the wind as well. It's interesting that God uses Laban to help Jacob to suffer the consequences of his behavior. So Laban was used as Jacob's chastening rod. And here God flips the tables. Now Jacob is used by God to chasten his uncle Laban. And so fascinating storytelling here in this primitive text. This is right out of Hollywood, because we're going to see everything flipped and turned over on its side. But again, when you sow the wind, you've got the tornado and you've got the whirlwind that you can expect to reap in the text. Last week, we looked at Jacob in the evenings with these 12 children, these 11 sons and this one daughter. Jacob has 12 kids in the span of 7 years. Remember, he's in Haran for 20 years. The first 7 years, he works to earn Rachel's hand in marriage. But you remember that Laban tricked him and deceived him and used treachery against his own nephew to actually give him Leah. And so he has to work another 7 years to get Rachel, but he gets Rachel up front 1 week after he marries Leah. And so last week, what we saw was 12 kids in the span of 7 years. And we said Jacob is Cody from Sister Wives, remember? And so we laughed at that, and we talked about that particular show on TLC and how that's exactly what's playing out before our eyes. Now we get a chance to see Jacob, not in the evenings at night propagating these kids, but we get to see Jacob in the daytime as an employee at work, as a shepherd. Last week, God multiplied Jacob's family. This week, God multiplies Jacob's finances. And so in Genesis chapter 30 is where we are. God is going to multiply Jacob's finances. Remember, the trilogy of the Abrahamic blessing is land, offspring, and blessings. And God is going to fulfill his covenant to Abraham through his grandson, Yaakov or Jacob. Last week, God gave him offspring. This week, God is giving him blessings. And then in the second half, God is going to send him home to go back to the land. Because all three of those things are the central sort of ethos of what God is doing in the patriarchal family. Last week was family. Now let's look at the blessings that God bestows upon Jacob as God multiplies his finances. Jacob finalizes a deal to continue to work for Laban. Before God calls him home, Jacob feels the need to go home, but Laban is not going to let that happen. Watch how this unfolds. A little bit of a introductory verse in verse 25 says this: after Rachel gave birth to Joseph, Yaakov said to Laban, "Send me on my way so that I can return to my homeland. Give me my wives and my children that I've worked for, and let me go. You know how hard I have worked for you." So Jacob announces a sense that, hey, it's a season. I've had these 12 kids. Look, I've fulfilled my mission. Originally, I came to Haran to get away from my brother, because my twin brother was going to kill me after stealing his birthright and stealing his blessing. So I had to get away from my brother, but the disguised reason I came here to live with my family was to find a wife. And I didn't just find one wife. I got 4 wives, and I got these 12 kids, and this season is over. I'm ready to go home. And so Jacob says to his uncle, hey, uncle, it's time for me to go home. And I want you to give me my 4 wives and my 12 kids and let me go on back home. Jacob ask for permission to go home as almost as if he's a slave, because usually when slaves in antiquity were emancipated from their masters, if they wanted to go free, their wives and children still belonged to the master. And the man could leave, but the wife and children stayed behind. They were still property of the master. And if the husband wants to stay with his wife and his kids, then he cannot go free unless the master is willing to emancipate the whole family. And Jacob is asking as if he's a slave, and he's not, because he's family. And he asks his uncle as if he's a slave, give me my wife and my kids, because I'm going home. It's time to return to my homeland. After 14 years of superior servitude, Haran is still not home for Jacob. Jacob says, you know how hard I've worked. I've been diligent. I've been faithful, which is interesting because Jacob has been a conniver and a manipulator and a shaker and a mover. And here Jacob is learned some responsibility. He's held down a job, and now he's asking for his release of his agreement. He agreed with Laban, I'll work for you for 7 years for Rachel. And then once the tables were turned, he agreed to work another 7 years to really get Rachel. And so the 14 years are up, and Jacob is ready to go home. In verses 27 and 28, Laban acknowledges Jacob's influence as a catalyst for his prosperity and asks Jacob to stay on. Watch this. Laban is not going to let Jacob go without a fight. Verse 27 says, but Laban said to him, if I have found favor with you, stay. I have learned by divination, watch this, that Yahweh has blessed me because of you. Then Laban said, name your wages and I'll pay them. Remember, the Abrahamic blessing was all of the peoples of the earth are going to be blessed through you. And here Laban is practicing divination, which is a ritual to try to discern the will of the gods. And Laban has been engaged in some polytheistic pagan religious practices, but yet God has spoken to Laban through his paganism and has shown him, hey, you have flourished, you have prospered, you have thrived, and the only reason why you've thrived is because you have the patriarch in your midst. And Laban humbly has to acknowledge that his blessings, his prosperity is a result of Jacob. And so Laban says, if I found favor in your sight, would you stay with your uncle? I need you to stay, man. Business is booming and you can't leave me while we're doing so well. Laban can't afford to lose an asset like Jacob. The enterprise is too important, and Laban is a materialistic individual, and so he cannot let his best employee leave. So he says, hey man, name your price, whatever it is, I'll pay it. Verse 29, Jacob said to him, you know how I have served you and how your herds have fared with me. For you had very little before I came, but now your wealth has increased. And Yahweh has blessed me because of you. No, he says that the Lord has blessed you because of me. And now when will I do something for my own family? Jacob respectfully declines his uncle's offer, reasoning that he spent the last 14 years making Laban wealthy. Now the time has come for him to put his young, bulging family first. Jacob's like, man, you want me to stay on and work? I've been working for you for 14 years. And you went from nothing to everything, and now you want me to stay on? What about my family? I've got 12 kids under the age of 7, and we got nothing. When is it time for me to focus on my family? I love Jacob sticking up for his family, but Jacob wants to make a deal with his uncle. So in verse 31, Laban asks, what shall I give you? And Jacob says, you don't need to give me anything. If you do this one thing for me, I will continue to shepherd and keep your flock. So Laban won't take no for an answer. He's an unashamed materialist, so he will drive a hard bargain here, but Jacob doesn't want Laban's charity. He simply wants fair compensation for the work he performs. Jacob has received no compensation for the 14 years of work that he has performed for his uncle, and so he wants compensation. He wants wages. He wants salary. He wants income for his work, not just working for his wives, because I can't feed my kids on that. I got 12 kids to take care of. Here's the bargain that Jacob makes with his uncle in verses 32, 33, and 34. Jacob says, "Let me go through all of your sheep today and remove every sheep that is speckled or spotted, every dark-colored sheep among the lambs, and the spotted and speckled among the female goats. Such will be my wages. In the future, when you come check on my wages, my honesty will testify for me." And that should crack us up, because Jacob doesn't have much integrity. But here he says, "My honesty will testify for me. If you have any female goats that are not speckled or spotted, or lambs that are not black, they will be considered stolen." "Good," said Laban, "let it be as you've said." Jacob makes Laban an offer that he can't refuse. So Jacob has been working for his uncle as a shepherd. And so Jacob makes a deal with Laban that he has to accept. So as a shepherd, Laban has sheep and he has goats. Well, goats tend to be black or brown. They are monocolored generally. Sheep tend to be, or at least it appears from the description, that Laban's sheep were white. But some of the sheep were striped and spotted and speckled. Well, Jacob says the sheep that are rare, that are few in number, as I take care of your sheep this year in this season, as we enter this contract, I want you to take away all of the black lambs and all of the striped, spotted, and speckled sheep and goats, so that I have just monocolored goats and just monocolored sheep. But at the end of the season, any sheep that are striped, spotted, or speckled, or any lambs that are black, those are mine. You get all of the monocolored flock, and anything that is multicolored is mine. That's the deal. Now, what's beautiful about this deal for Laban is that in the ancient world, in sheep breeding, only about 0 to 20% of the flock of sheep and goats come out striped, speckled, or spotted. So Laban thinks, man, at the most, I stand to lose 20%, and I get to cash in on the 80%. I'll take that deal. And so Laban accepts, Jacob accepts, they go into this contract, and Jacob's going to work for his uncle Laban. Now, here's what's interesting, because in verses 35 through 43, God prospers Jacob by foiling Laban's deceptive scheme to defraud Jacob. Jacob is not just a trickster and a defrauder and a manipulator, but so is his uncle. You guys know that, and watch what his uncle does to disenfranchise Jacob when Jacob is acting with integrity and with honesty. Look at how crooked Laban is. In verse 35, it says, "That day, the day they cut the deal, the day they entered into the contract, Laban removed the streaked and spotted male goats and all of the speckled and spotted female goats, every one that had any white on it, and every dark-colored one from among the lambs, and he placed his sons in charge of them. And he put a 3-day journey between himself and Jacob. Jacob, meanwhile, was shepherding the rest of Laban's flock." This is low down and dirty. This is his mother's brother. This is his uncle who has gone to his flock and has removed all of the multicolored goats and lambs so that Jacob has got nothing to start with. So how can I breed multicolored sheep and goats when you've removed all of the multicolored sheep and goats? I'm starting with nothing. All of the sheep and all of the goats are monocolored. And all of those monocolored flock, they belong to you. So here, Jacob is setting, Laban is setting Jacob up to fail by going and taking the multicolored flock away. And then taking them 3 days away so Jacob can't access them and through deception and through trickery bring some of the multicolored flock back and breed those because those offspring would be his. It's too far away. So now Jacob is starting with nothing. Anybody ever worked for a boss or worked in a situation where you felt like folks were stacking the deck against you? They were intentionally setting you up, sabotaging your work and your enterprise, hoping that you would fail miserably because they were hoping you would quit because they didn't have anything on you to fire you. And so they wanted to discourage you, have you disheartened. So maybe you would quit or maybe you transfer out. Anybody ever been in one of those situations? Jacob is in one of those situations with his uncle, and it is unbearable, but God. Laban has set Jacob up to fail. He sabotaged his flock and removed every resource through which Jacob could build his financial platform. But Laban's tactics, his scheme, are not obstacles for God. Watch what Jacob does. He employs some genetic selection in this prehistoric text. Look at this, verse 37. Jacob took branches of fresh poplar and almond and plain wood and peeled the bark, exposing white stripes on the branches. And he set the peeled branches in the troughs in front of the sheep, in the water channels where the sheep came to drink, and the sheep bred when they came to drink. The flocks bred in front of the branches and bore streaked, speckled, and spotted young. Jacob separated the lambs and made the flocks face the streaked sheep and the completely dark sheep in Laban's flocks. When he set his own stock apart, he didn't put them with Laban's sheep. Whenever the stronger of the flock were breeding, Jacob placed the branches in the troughs, in full view of the flocks, and they would breed in front of the branches. As for the weaklings of the flocks, he did not put out the branches. So it turned out that the weak sheep belonged to Laban and the stronger ones to Jacob. Now I know you guys are thinking, what is going on here? Jacob is starting with nothing. So Jacob, remember, he's been tending these sheep maybe 10, 14 years. He knows these sheep. Now, apparently Jacob knows that these monocolored sheep and goats will produce striped and speckled and spotted offspring. And so he gives them a visual cue he takes branches from a tree and he strips the bark off so that it's dark and light and dark and light, and he puts these branches in the water troughs when the animals come to breed, and when they see stripes on the branches, they produce offspring that are striped and spotted and speckled. And so Jacob then takes the sheep and the goats that are stronger, that are more viable, and they produce these striped, spotted, and speckled offspring. They produce these multicolored lambs. And so Jacob is cleaning up with Laban's monocolored flock that he was left of, both sheep and goats. These flocks are producing these multicolored offspring, and Jacob is cleaning up. He's got all of the strong sheep and goats, and Laban has got all the monocolored weak goats. Now, how does Jacob know to practice genetic selection? And here's what's interesting. I was doing some research because this fascinated me, and I want to just give you a pastoral version of genetic selection. So when genomicists and geneticists talk about the human genome and DNA and genes, we're reminded that our cells have a set of 46 chromosomes. In humans, we get 23 from mom and 23 from dad. Well, it's different in plants and animals, but because we're talking about animals here, these animals also, each one of their genes has dual coding. So it has one from a male goat and one from a female goat, one from a ram and one from a sheep. And so you get these what they call alleles. So you have homozygous cells that are dominant, some are recessive, and then some that are heterozygous. These have a dominant and a recessive gene. And so the illustration here shows you that in homozygous genes, you have a double capital A. These are dominant genes. In the homozygous genes that are double recessive, these double lowercase a's, these are recessive genes. And the heterozygous genes, they're dominant, but it has one dominant gene and one recessive. Here's what Jacob, though he has access to no science, and he's living 4,000 years ago, Jacob understands, and I don't know how he understands it, that some of the goats and sheep have this, that are heterozygous. That means that they're monocolored, but they produce both a dominant gene, which is why they're monocolored, but they also have a recessive gene that will allow them to produce multicolored offspring. Because you can't get multicolored offspring from a homozygous animal. And if you had an animal that had a double recessive gene, they wouldn't have color. They would just be all white. But these animals have both a dominant gene, which is why they're monocolored, but they also have the cell to produce multicolors as well. Now, how Jacob knows that, I don't know. Here are some pictures. The first one is some multicolored sheep that are black and white. This must have been the spotted and speckled sheep that now belong to Jacob. There's a spotted white goat. Usually goats are black or brown. As you see in this last picture, here's a picture of some goats hanging out on a hillside. There's some sheep in the foreground, but you see black and brown goats. But just next to them, you see a white goat with some brown and black spots on it. The little small baby goat, the kid as they call it, baby goats are called kids. There's a kid laying next to his mother, I believe, and that kid, if his mother has a black coat, he has a white and black coat. And so you can get multicolored flocks and kids and sheep from monocolored goats and sheep. Now, I thought all of that was fascinating. You may be bored to tears, but here's what Jacob knows. Laban thought that if I take all of the multicolored sheep and goats away, he may have a few, but all of the monocolored flock are going to produce monocolored offspring. And Jacob knows something because he's been with these sheep. He knows their reproductive capabilities, and he's turning the tables on Laban. Look at the summary verse in verse 43. It says, the man, Jacob, became very rich, and Jacob had many flocks, female and male slaves, and camels and donkeys. Now, if you see camels, Jacob is filthy rich because camels are rare in the ancient world, and they're uber expensive. So if Jacob has camels, because Abraham, his grandfather, had camels, Isaac has camels, Jacob is rolling in the money here. And this is unbelievable that Laban has tried to defraud Jacob a second time The first time was with the daughter swap, but here Jacob is turning the tables for the first time on his uncle Laban. Jacob goes from rags to riches. He goes from penniless to prosperous. He goes from broke to balling, all in the course of about 6 years, where he has amassed enough riches to buy male and female servants and camels and donkeys. Jacob is rolling in the money, not because he's hit the lottery, but because he's worked for 6 years to produce this enterprise. Jacob's superstition is not his ingenuity. This is really the work of God, and Jacob is going to give God all of the credit in the next section. Watch this. It looks like it was Jacob's doing, but really Jacob says, no. Don't be mistaken. This was all God's doing. Now, scientists cannot make sense of how these visual cues of these striped branches, how that stimulated these monocolored goats and sheep to produce striped and spotted and speckled offspring. Science can't explain that, and maybe there is no explanation. Maybe there's no natural cause. Maybe this is just a supernatural enterprise, and God is the explanation here, because science has no answers. The next movement, as we look at the last 22 verses here, is God's mandate. God mandates Jacob's return to his family. Verses 1 through 3, God forbids Jacob to remain in Haran. Now, God has blessed Jacob with family last week and with finances this week. Jacob is no longer broke, he's balling. He's no longer penniless, he's prosperous. He's no longer in rags, he's rich. And look at what God says. Now, Jacob heard what Laban's sons were saying. Jacob has taken all our fathers, all that was our father's, and has built this wealth from what belonged to our father. And Jacob saw from Laban's face that his attitude toward him was not the same as it was before. After 6 years, Laban's flocks are inferior and they're feeble, and Jacob is and got male and female slaves, camels and donkeys, and his flock is much larger than his uncle's, and he started out with nothing. Well, they got a little bit of that evil eye, that envious evil eye, and Jacob is now persona non grata with Laban and Sons. You know, they got a business. It's called Laban and Sons, and they don't want Jacob as their employee anymore. And so they're starting to give him the evil eye, and they're starting to give him the cold shoulder. And Jacob recognizes, we ain't family around here no more, I can see. And so God taps Jacob on the shoulder in verse 3, and look at what God says to Jacob. Yahweh said to him, "Go back to the land of your ancestors and to your family, and I'll be with you." God says to Jacob, he says, they're no longer with you. Your uncle and your cousins, they're no longer with you, but I'm still with you. Everywhere that I go, you are with me, Lord. And here God encourages Jacob and reminds him that he is with him, even though his family has rejected him. In these four, in the next section, Jacob, Rachel, and Leah call a family meeting regarding relocating to Canaan. Jacob has heard God's voice, and Jacob's got to sell this to his wife, because Jacob now has a problem with their father. And if he wants to get his wives on board, he's got to convince them to leave dad's home and to follow me as your husband to a land you've never been to. So here's Jacob having a come to Jesus conversation with Rachel and Leah. Let's trek along with this conversation. First thing Jacob does is he gets his wives away from the ear hustlers and the eavesdroppers. In verse 4, it says, Jacob had Rachel and Leah called to the field where his flocks were. That was so he could have a private conversation, because he's about to give them an update on how things are faring and why they need to head south to Canaan. Verse 5, Jacob said to them, I can see from your father's face that his attitude toward me is not the same as it was before, but the God of my father has been with me. As Jacob sets up this conversation with Rachel and Leah, he's going to contrast what his father has done to him, but how God has been in his corner. Laban is no longer with Jacob, but God is with me. In verse 5. Then in verse 6, Jacob says, you know, with all my strength I've served your father, and that he's cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. Your father hasn't treated me fairly, and I've worked for him for 20 years, and he's changed my wages 10 times. 10 times is just a round number to say he's changed my wages a lot. We think that Laban may have said to Jacob, hey, you know what? You don't get the striped and the spotted flock. You just get the speckled. Hey, Jacob, you no longer get the speckled. You only get the striped. Hey, Jacob, you no longer get the striped and the speckled. You only get the spotted. You see the game that Laban was playing to try to minimize his ability to thrive and prosper as a result. And so Laban is a materialist. He's a maniacal materialist. And so anything he can do to sabotage Jacob's prosperity, he did that. And Jacob says, I agreed to wages and your father kept changing my wages. Those of you that are going to work tomorrow, how would you like it if you walked in and they said, hey, you know what you used to make? We're going to change that and you're going to make something else. And then next week you go in and they tell you that your pay is going to be something else. How do you keep up with that? That's what Laban was doing to Jacob. But so your father has cheated me and changed my wages umpteen times, but God didn't let him harm me. Verse 8, he says, the spotted sheep will be your wages. Then all the sheep were born spotted. And if he said the streaked sheep will be your wages, then all the sheep were born streaked. He says again, he kept changing my wages, but God has taken away your father's herds in verse 9 and given them to me. Jacob is making the case to Laban's daughters, his wives, that your father has been cruel, he's been a tyrant, and he's been oppressive. But even in the midst of his ill treatment, God has allowed me to prosper, and God has blessed me, and God has allowed me to thrive and to flourish, even though your father tried to sabotage my enterprise. Guys, can I just say that when you are in these spaces and places where you're working for an employer, or you have a job where you're not being treated fairly by the boss or by the company or by the organization, I want you guys to know that the same God who took care of Jacob when he was being oppressed and when he was experiencing tyrannical supervision and treatment by his boss, and the same way God allowed him to flourish and prosper in the midst of that oppression, God will do that for you as well. Because God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And he sees the oppression of his people. And God is with Jacob in the midst of the mistreatment that he's experiencing. God is not divorced from that. God is in it with us. And God is in Jacob's circumstance and situation. And God is moving to deliver Jacob. Somebody said the best revenge is success. Success in the face of those who tried to hold you back and hold you down. And here God is allowing Jacob to experience success when Laban and his sons want Jacob to fail at his breeding enterprise. Look at verse 10, chapter 31. It says, when the flocks were breeding, Jacob says, I saw in a dream that the streaked, spotted, and speckled males were mating with the females. And in that dream, the angel of God said to me, Jacob, and I said, here I am. And he said, look up and see all the males that are mating with the flocks are streaked and spotted and speckled, for I have seen all that Laban has done to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you poured oil on the stone maker and made a solemn vow to me. Get up, leave this land and return to your native land. God has said, hey, I've seen what your oppressor, your uncle, is doing to you, and I'm going to be with you. The promise I made to you at Bethel before you ever made it to Haran in northern Mesopotamia, I'm fulfilling that promise. And so God said to Jacob, so Jacob's idea for breeding, for this genetic selection, this is God's enterprise. It came to him in a dream. Now, notice there's no instruction from God about taking branches and stripping off some of the bark so that the branches will be striped, which was a visual cue to these goats and sheep to produce streaked and spotted and speckled flocks. But the idea, the intuition, the foresight that God was going to move in Jacob's midst, God had shown him that in a dream. And then God gives him these 3 commands in verse 13. The first one is get up. The second command, leave this land. And the third command in this trilogy is to return to your native land. And Jacob is sharing all of this with Rachel and Leah as he's making the case for why they need to move south and go home. Now, what's interesting is that the wives speak up in verses 14 through 16. I love this. Rachel and Leah answered him, do we have any portion or inheritance in our father's family? Are we not regarded by him as outsiders? For he has sold us and has certainly spent our purchase price. In fact, all of the wealth that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and our children. It belongs to our family. So do whatever God has said to you. Interesting that Rachel and Leah say that Laban has treated his own daughters as outsiders. They said that their father had treated them as commodities to be sold to Jacob. And he squandered their wedding dowry. Therefore, they said, we have no inheritance to expect from our father, especially since women don't customarily inherit property in the ancient world, especially if there are male siblings, and Rachel and Leah have brothers. So they're like, look, hey, you worked 14 years to marry us. What did our father do with that money as he prospered because you were working diligently for him and God was blessing him? Our father should have taken that money that he was making and he should have put it aside. So in the ancient world, when women were given to marriage, usually the father received a price for his daughter. And that father received financial compensation for his daughter for this reason. If the husband died or divorced the wife and she fell on financial hard times, the father could take that dowry or that wedding price and give it to his daughter so she could financially sustain herself. So fathers are supposed to hold on to that dowry in case their daughter's husband died or divorced them. And they're like, where's our money? You work 14 years. We got no inheritance. We're not going to inherit any of what our father has, and he spent and squandered our money. So they're like, yeah, we don't need to stay around here. There ain't nothing for us around here because our father has spent it all. I love this. One quote from John Walton said this, and I'll just read this to you. I didn't give you this on your slides, but Walton says this. I thought this was a great insight. He says, the willingness of Leah and Rachel to leave is premised on an accusation against their father concerning his handling of their inheritance. As mentioned above, the bride price paid by the husband's family was supposed to be held in trust in the event it was needed to provide for the wife if she were abandoned or widowed. Jacob, of course, gave no bride price but his labor. So the equivalent of his wages should have been set aside for the women. Apparently, that was never done. Jacob's labor has benefited Laban, not his daughters. Thus, it is as if he sold them to Jacob. And if their father's house holds no economic security for them, they have no reason to stay. And so they're ready to go. They feel like they've been exploited by their father. And so they're like, come on, husband, whatever God has told you and given you the vision for our family, we're with you, all of us. We're going to do this thing together. So the last paragraph for us, verses 17 through 21, Jacob and his family flee from Laban. Verse 17, so Jacob got up, put his children and wives on camels, and he took all the livestock and possessions he had acquired in Padan Aram, and drove his herds to go to the land of Canaan to his father Isaac. Notice, not to his mother Rebekah, but to his father Yitzhak or Isaac. Verse 19, when Laban had gone to shear his sheep, Rachel stole her father's household idols. And Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean, not telling him that he was fleeing. And he fled with all his possessions and crossed the Euphrates and headed for the hill country of Gilead. Here's a map. You guys have this in your Coram Deo. Jacob is up here in Haran. He's been up there for 20 years, all the way at the very top. And they are crossing over the Euphrates River, heading down into this region, Gilead, which is east of the Sea of Galilee, and they're heading home so that they can get back to Shechem. But it's just fascinating that Jacob is leaving, and Jacob pulls a fast one on Laban because it's maybe April or May, and it's sheep shearing time. And sheep shearing time is very important if you are in flocks and herd business. It requires a lot of manpower, and it's a very festive time. And so so Laban and sons are away shearing their flock. And while the cat's away, the mice are going to make a run for it. And so Jacob and his 4 wives and their 12 kids jump on the camels. And Jacob has got this massive flock that he has got to walk. And it probably, remember, it took Jacob maybe 50 to 60 days to make this trek on his own. It probably would almost double that time with 4 wives, 12 children, male and female slaves, and a massive flock that you have to herd from the northern Mesopotamia all the way down into Canaan. Would have taken at least a couple of months to make this journey. But they're trying to get away while Laban is away. And what's fascinating here is that while Laban and sons are preoccupied shearing the sheep, Jacob slips away undetected, and Rachel steals Laban's household idols. And she tucks them away in the satchel on her camel. More about the household idols on next week. But a lot of people worshipped idols. You can tell that Isaac and Rebekah's family in Haran are polytheists, and they worship Yahweh, and they worship other gods, and they've got these idols that are in their home that are probably on shrines. And Rachel knows that her father is away with her brothers shearing the sheep, and she brings the idols with her. And that's the reason why the Israelites continued their idolatrous worship, because they come from idolatry. And God has always, from the very beginning, tried to translate them to worship God and to worship God alone. But from the very outset, they've been bringing the gods with them. And so they worship Yahweh, but we also had these other gods too. And so they've brought together this syncretistic sort of religious system with them. And God has been challenging them from the very beginning to put the idols away and worship God and worship God alone. Here is our Coram Deo for you. Here's some thoughts that resonated with me from the text. The first one is when men abandon us, God promises to always be with us everywhere that I go. That's why we sung that song, because God is with us everywhere that I go. God says, I will walk with you and you will walk with me, Lord, everywhere that I go. Because God had promised Jacob at Bethel, and now Jacob is willing to go where God has called him to go because he knows God is with him. That's why we sung that song earlier. Number two, employees are worthy of their agreed upon wages, and never should their compensation be withheld from them. Laban has shown us that God doesn't tolerate when workers are exploited and their wages are withheld from them. God will show up and vindicate those that have worked diligently and have earned the compensation that they agreed upon. Let us be the type, if we are business owners and if we are managers and directors, executive directors, VPs, whatever our role is, if we are managing people, one of the things we have to do is make sure that our people are receiving the compensation that we've agreed to pay them, because it's an injustice to withhold people's compensation. And may we be the fiercest allies and advocates to safeguard the financial well-being of our people. Laban doesn't do that, and God prospers Jacob in the midst of this tyrannical and oppressive behavior. Number three, Laban's divination and Jacob's superstition with these branches and the water troughs are not obstacles God can't overcome en route to fulfilling his Bethel blessings to Jacob and his offspring. Laban's divination, Jacob's superstition, and God uses it all for his plans and his purposes, which are to pass along the patriarchal blessing to Jacob and his offspring. And so, guys, our God is amazing. He works through things that are diametrically opposed to who he is and how he does things to supernaturally and sovereignly and providentially bring out his desired end. Oh, as the old black folks used to say in the church where I come from, what a mighty God we serve. God, we thank you for this word today. We thank you that you are an amazing God who superintends the destiny of his people. And even though Jacob deals with difficulties and delays and discord in his own family who has employed him, God, you will bring about justice for your people. So, God, we thank you so much that you are faithful. We thank you, God, that you do what you've promised. So, God, for your glory, I will do anything just to see you and to behold you as our King. And so, God, no matter how far we have to go, we'll cross the hottest desert. We'll travel near or far for your glory. And Jacob is willing to go home for your glory. So, God, may we go where you want us to go and do what you want us to do for your glory. So, God, we thank you for your word today. Thank you that you are a promise maker and a promise keeper. What you have promise you have delivered in the life of the patriarch, and you're not even done yet. So, God, would you show up in our lives, and would you deliver on the promises that you've made to us in your time? God, we thank you and we honor you with our whole hearts in Jesus' name. Amen.